Let's talk about how to upgrade your buyer consultation in such a way that it's easy to get the buyer brokerage agreement signed.
All right, today on the WB&L Wandering But Not Lost podcast.
You've reached the WB&L Wandering But Not Lost podcast, where real estate and reality meet. And now your hosts, Jan O'Brien and Matt Emerson.
Well, welcome everyone to the WB&L Wandering But Not Lost podcast, where real estate and reality meet. This is episode 272. You can find all of those show notes over at WBNLpodcast.com.
Yes.
Jan O'Brien, Happy New Year again.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Technically, last time when we, because we had an episode that dropped on New Year's Day, but we technically had to actually done that back in way back in old 2023. But this is official now, 2024. It's going to be.
Are you ready for a chaotic, fast-paced year? Because it's already starting.
I'm just ready for a great year. Let's just have a great year. All right.
So I heard somebody say more in 24, and I've been adapting this more in 24, but from a perspective of what does more mean to you? It doesn't necessarily mean more hours in the day, more money necessarily, more work. It can mean more freedom, more balance, more things that you can do that you're going to enjoy.
More joy.
More joy. More in 24. So this year is really going to be an interesting year in real estate if you've been paying attention to what's out there. So we're going to talk about today buyers, and then probably throughout the rest of this month we'll talk about shifting to sellers, because I do think we're going to see more. We need to get geared up to take more listings, because I think at some point when the interest rates come down enough, there's this magical number that people have in their mind. I'm already starting to see a pickup here, Matt. We were out over the last couple of days right after the new year.
Right.
Cosmo and I, we were at new homes. We were doing lives, and there were a ton of people out looking at houses. Okay, so I think people are ready. There's been a pent-up demand. There's been, interestingly enough, the interest rates fell a little bit, but then the jobs reports came out that made them boost back up, meaning like the jobs reports were good from the perspective of people who are employed.
Right.
That was bad for the rates. And there's a report coming out today as we record this on a Friday that will move them. So the interest rates inched up 3 out of the last 4 days, where they had been 5 days in a row coming down. So they're fluctuating in the mid sixes for conventional loans. But the point is, election year, with the forecast from the Fed that they're probably going to start. But then there's back and forth on this, Matt. There's we're going to reduce the rates. Then it's like, well, we don't want to reduce the rates too much to then reverse everything and get us back into inflation. Because there is just in the housing sector, there's so much pent up demand that people want to go buy, and sellers are going to be like, I'm ready to get a new house or upsize or downsize. And so some number in people's heads, I think it's going to be under 6%. If it ever gets down in the 5-somethings, we're going to have chaos again, meaning not enough inventory, lots of buyers. Right. So what does that mean? If you have sellers, you're in great shape if more people want to buy houses. So that's why we're going to focus on that. But today I want to focus on how do you get clear about just working with people who are willing to work with you, do a better job presenting your value proposition so that you can deal with what's going to fall out from all the NAR lawsuits, settlements, and copycat lawsuits that are happening. We've got resources for you. So why don't we jump into that first?
And best to get ahead of it, right, Jan O'Brien?
Get ahead of it. Yes, it's going to be drug out in court with, what do you call it when you get a verdict and then you appeal it? I always have a problem with that word, appeal. So let's talk about how to upgrade your buyer consultation and just get this done, okay? Make sure, and I'm going to give you some things that need to be in it, and then I'm going to talk about how I really think that's what we're doing, is just like we're upgrading to a customized folder that Cosmo designed, and we're going to have some of this printed material when we meet with someone. We do a good job on our consultation. We just haven't been leading to getting a buyer brokerage agreement signed, because in our state, in our city, it's not common. People aren't taught to do it here. And around the country, people in different parts, people just learn to do it. Realtors do.
And there has to be a critical mass of people that are actually doing it, because it's hard to be the leader in that. You know what I'm saying? Because people can go, if the buyer's not comfortable, they can go a million other places. So
right, and your custom in your area is what it is. And so I was just shout out to Lynette, because I know Lynette I told Lynette this is dropping. So congratulations, Lynette's a coaching client, and she uses a buyer brokerage agreement in her community all the time, because that is what she's learned to do. And she values she knows she only has so much time in the day, and that we only have so much time in the day. But I know that none of us can afford to work with someone who is not committed to working with you, meaning they don't see your complete value, even though they might trust and like and respect you, but they want to leave their options open. I just think you have to decide, do you want to work that way? And I personally do not want to work that way. I want to work the way Lynette is working. My coaching client is working. And now, it doesn't mean that buyers aren't going to change their mind, that they may not buy a house, but that's okay. But, if they're in a commitment to you, it's like listing the buyer. So let's talk about listing the buyer. Because if you've listed homes, you always get a contract.
Sure.
You're not going to go do all this work and not get them to commit exclusively to working with you. So now you've got to reverse engineer that with the buyer and show your value. And I think a lot of people do have value. You're pretty good at sharing that, but we got to take it up a notch. So in our show notes today, I found some resources and just doing some research that I want to share with my team. Sorry. That is from NAR. And I'm happy to report that I think on a previous podcast, I was like, when are they going to put the buyer reasons to work with a buyer's agent? Well, it's out there. So they started with 179 reasons that and it's based for sellers, that your realtor it's geared to give to the public, that your realtor is worth every penny of compensation, paid to them. Now they've got 105 ways a realtor is worth every penny of the compensation, 105 more ways. And that really gets into everything you do with a buyer. Now, I recommend downloading that. We've put links to the competition area on NAR's site. There's a PDF link that actually has that 105. You can download the 179. And from that, I don't know if I like it as something you could print it out and put it in your little folder. But I think we're more going to pull stuff out of that and customize it and put it into a document that becomes the value proposition that we're going to talk about right now. But I've also got some pretty good sites I found. A couple of people that are out there, one broker who's done a good job recording some videos explaining what happened in those lawsuits. It's from their point of view, but I watched it and I'm like, if you're not up to speed with it, here's a few places to get started, okay? And like, what did it mean? And what was the one that was not settled, but was found for the plaintiffs? What were the key points in there? And it had mainly to do with, it's so interesting because I listened to this one broker, and I agree with him completely. I think it was a really good plaintiff's attorney who made it look like, and all the jury are just public people going, yeah, those realtors are taking advantage of us with charging too much commission, and they're all in cahoots together, and they're colluding, and that's where the Sherman antitrust came in, and compensation, and I didn't really realize that they kind of told me nobody would show my house if I didn't do this. And so all of that, go get up to speed, because you may come across people who follow the news, even though it's not in the news at the moment, but it was when those suits, because now it's on to whatever else is the shiny penny for the moment.
Right.
And it's going to go on for a while, but get yourself ready, because I know of some people who weren't ready and they've lost listings because they really couldn't show their value, if you will. Okay. So we've got all those links for you. Okay.
Good deal.
Sorry. I have to, come on, throat, stay with me. So we know that we have to build trust and rapport. And I think seasoned agents and agents that are new that have learned this are getting that. So what we've done is prepared a list of key points that need to be covered in your buyer consultation and or your initial interactions with people. Because maybe you're talking to people a little bit here and there on the phone or in a Zoom call before you actually meet with them to decide if you're going to go show property and get the buyer brokerage. So yeah, I knew Matt would probably appreciate this one. This was
I love it.
It came up. Be an active listener is point one. And honestly, this is completely how Cosmo and I start every consultation. And it's basically, before we jump into how great we are and what we're going to do for it, it's like, if Matt's the buyer, we're going to say, thank you for reaching out to us. Everything is going to come from gratitude. And thank you for, generally it's because they're following us on social, and it'll be like, tell us your story. What is it that you're wanting to do? What are your goals? Just talk to us. And then just ask an open-ended question and let people start. And then you can dive into, it's all about them right now. Right. You're interested in their goals. What are their goals? What is it that they want to do? What is their time frames? Let them talk before you start hitting them with a million questions. And this is really setting the tone of like, wow, these people really listen, because everybody's different. Don't think you know what's best for them, right? So anything to add to that?
No, just people. I mean, this goes beyond just buyer counsel. This is life. This, how, like Jan said, when I saw this, when Jan was sent over the notes, I'm putting the presentation together. I'm like, yep, that makes total sense, because for crying out loud, you need to do this in real life too.
Matt is the best active listener, and he's been my active listening coach for years. So he has rubbed off on me. Thank you very much, kind sir.
That's fine.
All right. And so now throughout you're going to be demonstrating your market expertise. So now we've got them to tell the story. So we're just going to stick with the buyer consultation. And then some of these points you may have been doing some of this in your initial conversations with them. So the next one is demonstrate your market expertise. Well, we know, my partner and I know, Cosmo, that we have demonstrated this. Why it's a lot of reasons why people are reaching out to us, because we have it in our videos. So we understand the local real estate market. Cosmo does a weekly, really detailed market update for Las Vegas in our videos. And there's the people who love that. There's people who love that data. And then there's people that think it's cool, but they're not as much into it. But still, it shows that we know our market expertise, not just by that, but by knowing the areas of town, understanding the market conditions. Are we in a buyer or seller's market? What's happening? We're talking about new homes. We're constantly providing that in the way that we decide to generate business. It's through our online presence and through videos. Now, if you're not doing any of that, then you have to come across that way in these initial meetings. So can you talk about the market? Our process is, if we meet them online or in Zoom or in person, we get their story. We find out what they're looking for. We're going to dig into some more of the details later, but we'll jump in and start giving them an overview and start demonstrating, on the MLS or in the new homes, and start showing them properties just virtually. Okay, based on getting their information. Okay, so that's the next step. Demonstrate your market expertise, which hopefully you're doing in multiple ways before you even meet them. It goes without saying that you've got to explain the home buying process. Now, you can be overwhelming. I mean, you don't maybe want to get into all the details of this, but people don't assume that people really understand. They want to be informed and they want to know what's the next step. So one of the ways we're going to conquer this year is put all of that into our magic folder. So we're going to have a little bit more detailed document that will go in this folder that has a lot of this information in it. What's our value proposition? Why work with us? Reminding them of that. Maybe some client testimonials will be in there, but there will also be these empowering things in here to educate the buyer on the home buying process, and specifically a bit of a checklist that says, here's things you're going to need to do as we move along. And then here's things we're doing for you. So it's like, they will have a document that says, now we need to do this. And then we're reinforcing it with our conversations with them once we're through the home showing process and then negotiating the offer. All the busy work that happens once you're in escrow, you can do a better job if you're not already doing it by providing tools for them. And then, of course, you're sending emails and you're reminding them and you're meeting with them and saying, okay, here's what's next. But if they already have it, that's really showing that professionalism. But in this meeting, you're also just explaining the home buying process. Let's just do an overview. And you could use the document in your presentation and just pull it up and say, here's what we're going to do. And then we're going to get you to talk to a lender, and then we're going to go show homes. And then you can start going through the major milestones and then say, don't be overwhelmed. But it's so important to have what it is you're doing for them, because and that's why I like that document from National Association. It's a little overwhelming, but at the same time,
there's a lot there.
There's a lot there, but you're saying, these things I'm doing behind the scenes, and I'm not always telling you that. This is where we've got to have a better connection with our buyers to say, it is, I don't know if the other 2 or 3 people I'm working with right now to see, because you didn't get me to sign a buyer brokerage agreement and I'm going to see who finds the house for me. I don't know if they're doing as much as these guys are doing. So that's the whole goal of what we're trying to accomplish today in our podcast, is help you understand what you've got to do. Don't assume that people know what it is you do behind the scenes for them. So don't overwhelm them, but you're going to say, yeah, don't worry. Let's just go to the next. Here's all the steps. I've given you this package. We're going to cover this as we go across. I'm going to walk you through every step of the process. I'm with you all the way to the end and after we close. That has to come across in this initial consultation.
Remember those couple graphs we put together, or kind of it wasn't really an infographic, but this had all of the steps. It was
exactly. You know, that's a document you could have in there, right? It's kind of like the roadmap. That's a nice visual, Matt.
It was, because it just showed that it was complex. It wasn't just this, we're sitting around. It doesn't start with A and then B, your paycheck. You know what I mean? So, prancing off to the bank and the whistling. So there's a lot of steps in between.
Just for the sake of time, you can look at our show notes, but obviously you're covering things like the importance of getting pre-approved. I don't think you go take people out other than maybe one time if you're meeting them to just get more about what they want, but you don't want to go keep taking people out unless they've been pre-approved if they need a loan. And now what I'm suggesting is that they've signed your agency and buyer brokerage agreement, because that's the commitment. And you only have so many hours in the day, folks. And if you're going to really create more business for yourself this year, you can't afford to work with someone who's not willing to commit to working with you. You're better off letting them go and finding somebody who is going to appreciate working with you and then will refer business to you. It's a very hard step, and we're having to make that shift. Trust me, I'm right there. So it's all about that, how we're going to house hunt, how we're going to write the offer. We'll cover all those details, but you're hitting it on high level all the way to counter offers, and then, then we'll walk you through. Like, I wouldn't stay in this initial consultation. I would talk about everything about getting ready to go show, getting pre-approved, showing, and writing offers, and then let them know once we have that, we'll walk you through, but we've got all the stuff right here in your packet, right? Because it's too much. You're going to overwhelm people. All right, next up is to...
There was just more in that list, a buying process.
Oh, really? Honestly, I don't want to cover it. Sorry. So that's what I was saying, because I knew there was more, but you don't want to, you're going to have it all in there. But in our little list, it's explaining the home inspection process and all that. That needs to be, in my opinion, you can hit it high level, but you need to have it in a document so you can understand it. But you'll be talking to somebody for 2 hours and you'll just overwhelm them. So use your judgment. If somebody's a first-time home buyer, they might have a bunch of questions. There's difference than just saying, I'm going to bore you for an hour and walk you through every step of the home buying process.
That's right.
So hit it high level. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Good.
All right, so your unique value proposition is going to be kind of splattered throughout this whole presentation, if you will. But here's where I do think you've got to have something in writing, similar to you would have in a listing presentation, as why work with me. So far we've been talking about very similar to listings. What's the steps in the process? What are the goals of the seller is stuff you do in the listing. So we're switching gears. What's the goal of the buyer? How do we educate them? How do we get them to understand? Let's teach you what the process is if you need to know. Let's remind you of the process, and then let's talk about how we're different than any other agent out there. Mm-hmm. And that's what your UVP is going to be about. What are the keys? And I think we're putting it in. You can put it into my 11-point plan. I've seen all these kind of things. Yeah. There are our commitment to you as a buyer's agent, representing you exclusively. And so this is where you're going to talk about your market expertise, your experience level, your negotiating skills and strategies, how you're going to get them the best deal possible for them, and anything else that sets you apart for how you help them. A couple things that like for example, one of the things that we do is Cosmo will go fly his drone. If we have an inspector who doesn't, go and look at we'll go up there not to be an inspector, but just to go the extra mile, fly the drone and look up at the roof or things like this, right? So the fact that you might have a network of of industry peers where you can find off-market properties. There's all these things. Like, what is it that you do that might be above and beyond going the extra mile? What tech are you using? How do you keep them updated on properties that are available through the MLS or whatever it is that you're doing? Obviously, your professional experience. This is not all about you, but you can have it in there to say, how long you've been in the business. Do you have certifications? And then I do think it's important to have client testimonials. Some people are going to Google you and search you out, but if you had in this document, if you had multi-page document, it had what people say you do, people do look at that. Let's face it. We've been in a review economy for years for everything. Everybody, you don't go buy a product on Amazon unless you check out. I don't know if you do, but I don't. I now look at all the reviews before I make a decision because there's always so many options. There's so many options for realtors. There's so many options to go buy a camera. You're going to go buy the one that people say is the best.
That's right.
And has the best value in the whole 9 yards. So then you can get into explaining property search strategies. What's your approach? Here's where I would be doing things like, I'll always ask, because I gave up a long while ago trying to get people to use my app or my MLS, because they're going to use what they like. And they either are going to like Zillow, Redfin, or Realtor.com. Okay. So I'll say, hey, Matt, I know you've been looking at properties. What's your favorite place? And they'll say Zillow. I'll say, great. Then we're going to set up a search for you, or the new homes aren't all on the MLS. Here's how we're going to give you, we have a database of new homes that you could use. And so we're going to go through all that depending on if they want resale, new, or both. And we're going to say, we're setting you up for a search, but people are actively looking all the time because they don't trust that you're showing them all the properties. They've been like that forever, people. So great. When you find a property, then text it to us. And then inevitably they'll find something, and then we'll go look it up and say it's not available anymore because Zillow's information is inaccurate, or it doesn't actually match your criteria. So have you changed your criteria? This one doesn't have, a 2-car garage. So whatever the deal is, you'll use it to reinforce, but you're walking through what are the tools you're using, how are you going to find the properties for them, how the whole property search and setting up the search and the tours is going to work, right? And then you're using this, this is where you're continuing to help people narrow down their search. A lot of times people don't exactly know what they want. And until you get out there and show them property a few times, they're going to be like, well, I want to be on that side of town in a single story, and they buy on the other side of home in a 2-story home. But you won't know that until you start working with them. But you're constantly going to be, narrowing down the search based on, like we meet people from out of town. They think they know where they want to be, and it's all different. That's why we offer an orientation tour. Like if they don't want to buy till later in the year, but they're going to come to town, great. Let's go spend a couple hours. We'll take you around so you can get clear about what area of town you want to live in, what neighborhood, what you're looking for. So we go from what it looks like online to boots on the ground, driving around the neighborhoods, and then we get super clear, narrow the focus. We'll be back in 3 months. Keep us in the loop. Keep sending us property. We'll be ready to buy in 3 months. That's an example if you're clear about that, how you can handle it. All right. So property search is another area. What's next? Communication, collaboration, and availability. This is just clear. So you've got to get across, whether you have it in your bullet points of what's unique about you. How do you communicate? How often? Find out their preferred method of communication. That what I just described is that collaboration. Send us properties you find. So we're not trying to say don't use Zillow anymore, because they're going to. So, it's collaborative. Tell us, let's keep working together so we're clear about what it is you want. Their input is valuable. So this is where it's the listening thing. We're communicating. We're not telling you what we think is best for you. You're telling us, we're providing the information, you're providing feedback, we're constantly tweaking it, and we're going back and forth so that we're aware and we're all on the same page, okay? I'm available to address your concerns. We use a lot of text. People have lots of questions. It's okay to ask questions. What's the preferred way you want? We're in a group text with our clients, most of them, and just ask your questions. You're not bothering us. So that's where you set those tones, that you're available, but you have to have boundaries, okay? You're not available 24/7. You can decide if you're going to, do something because somebody's available only now, but you've got to control that a little bit. And people will respect boundaries if you set them. Okay?
That's right.
Transparency goes without saying. This is where we're going to be making sure you're talking about any fees in addition to the buyer brokerage compensation that you charge, or if you cover for them. How does the offer of co-op compensation actually work in your area? And this is where things may change as we move down the path.
Yeah.
I just got something in our MLS today that is addressing these commission lawsuit things. And it's now saying that it used to say something different. Now it's saying, for transparency, you can go anywhere from 0 to whatever for the co-op. So that's the first time our MLS has had.
Wow.
You can put in there 0. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because I personally feel it's not worked itself out yet, that if people, I know it's just going to happen. And I'm not saying that you should say this to a seller, completely not. But if somebody is not strong enough to go out on a presentation right now and think that by putting 0 in there, they're going to get their house sold, they could get their house sold if the house is amazing. It's just going to be a limited number of people in my market at the moment that are going to have buyer brokerage agreements that the buyer is going to be willing to cover the compensation. So It's opening the whole can of worms and we're going to have to work through this, that if I'm that person that it says 0% compensation. So this is where we have to say, we're starting to see 0 and all this. We've just talked through we're about to get to this place, but I'll say it now. You come up with what your minimum compensation is, whatever that is for you. Maybe it's 2.5. I don't know, whatever it is for you. You set your commission for yourself, and you're working with the buyer to say, part of that is going to be the way we're going to negotiate the commission. So let's say that 2.5% is what our commission is on representing you exclusively. Mr. Buyer, we're going to take the offer of compensation that may or may not be there first. So if they're offering 1%, you're agreeing to pay us that additional 1.5%, which we're going to structure in the transaction. And the whole point I'm making here, Matt, is that if someone is, up until this point, whatever the offer of compensation was, 2, 2.5, 3, whatever, 3.5, whatever it was built into the offer. So the seller was technically thinking they were paying for it because it was coming out of the proceeds, but it was actually coming from the buyer's offer.
That's right.
So if the buyer is not having to pay their realtor, then they may write in a higher offer. This is what's going to play out, guys. This is what we're going to have to see. So you're going to have to watch your market to see. I'm intrigued that I'm going to start watching to see how many 0s we have in there.
I'm going to tell you, that's going to open up a whole nother slew of lawsuits when agents start steering away from 0 commissions on the buyer side. Because
that's the whole problem.
Yeah.
But now so you're going to have to decide, if you're a buyer's agent, if you're not using a buyer brokerage agreement and you're just only counting on, you can't just go show properties that only offer compensation. So you're going to have to not work with buyers then. Yeah. Or you're going to have to work with buyers to say
it is going to be really interesting, because it's going to get worse before it gets better for sure.
Yep. So we're going to have to get through all of that and see. But I personally just feel that it's hurting the seller at the moment, because not in our market, maybe not in your market, because if in your market everyone does a buyer brokerage agreement, and even if there was an offer of compensation before, what is being offered is going to change. So we're just going to have to play that out. But this is where you have to start working on this. So transparency is where you have to talk it out. And then here becomes the issue of your market may or may not allow dual agency or representing both the buyer and the seller. I never like this. I think that this is going to get to a place where you are either representing the buyer or you're representing the seller. And if you have your own listings, you don't try to represent both. Now, here in Nevada, you can do that. I've never had like it, but I think that if you're going to work with a buyer, under the way things are changing now, this is a big part of what you're saying, that if you're a big listing agent, then refer the buyer to someone else if you were to get the buyer off of your own marketing efforts, is my opinion. You do what you need to do, but if we're going to get to this place of I am exclusively representing you and looking out for your best interest, I don't know how you do that if it's also your listing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So that's going to help you if you commit to I'm exclusively your representative. And there are states like Florida where you're just a transactional broker, which is
Right.
going to be a whole nother interest. I don't even want to get into that. They're not even doing agency and fiduciary in a lot of places in Florida right now. So can you commit to exclusive representation? That maybe helps you in the whole buyer brokerage agreement thing. So we talked a little bit about this, addressing their concerns. So throughout a presentation, it's like, what questions do you have? Is there anything that we haven't talked about? This is how you can, if you talk about everything up front and explain things, then you're not going to have objections later, right? So the only way to know that is to ask questions, right? What have we not covered? What else are your concerns? So make sure you've put that into your presentation as well. Now we get to what's next. So you've now covered everything. And this, if you do a good job in this presentation, you will have earned their, if they're just a fresh lead and you never met them before, it may take a little longer. You've got to get their trust. They need to see your value and they need to want to work with you.
Right.
So now it's the importance of explaining how the buyer brokerage agreement works, which is where I was just at a moment ago, of explaining that you can negotiate your commission. That's what the whole point is. Our commission is X. That's what for all the things that we cover. Now, it's just like a listing agent saying, well, what about the guy that will do a 1% listing? I'm like, there's a bunch of them out there that'll do it. And you could certainly talk to them, but they're not going to do all of these services for you. So this is where you're going to have to show that you go above and beyond. You're not just an order taker. There's a lot of buyer's agents, Matt, that just go out and show properties and then barely do the things that we've just talked about.
Sure.
And that's part of the problem. So you've got to express get that across to the person that they want to work for you, because you're going to save them money, find them the best deal, negotiate on their behalf, fight for them.
Give them some peace of mind.
And for that, there's compensation. Now, whether that compensation comes out of the offer that you're presenting, which is we negotiate because the seller's not having to pay us a commission, that's going to be part of your closing costs. And this is where it's like, it's easier said than done, because we still have issues and hurdles to go through, like the financing. Can they finance the commission? Buyers that only have a finite amount of money to bring to the table. This is where the issues are that we're going to have to work through. And I don't think it's changing overnight. I think we're going to continue to see compensation like it's always been offered through the MLS. I think it's just going to, the way that we disclose things and talk to buyers and sellers is what we're going to have to get through, but we're just going to have to see, So, I mean, if I was right now about to go show a property and there was zero compensation, then I would say, we're happy to go, show you this property. Just know that that's falling into the category that the compensation has to come from your side.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the tough part, but you need to start having those conversations and talk to your broker and your training team. And it's different for every market, and get good at talking about that. Okay. And I really think for me, it's going to be all about, if we really have to switch to this, it's all about, helping people understand that the how we were getting paid was built into their offer already.
Sure.
Okay. So we'll see. So again, gratitude, enthusiasm. We want to end on a positive note. We're grateful to have them as a client, because if somebody now doesn't want to sign the buyer brokerage agreement, this is where, and we would also have to do our agency disclosure, which is called the duties owed here. Mm-hmm. I am saying that the way we're moving forward is, after this meeting and before we go and show maybe a second time or take more time with someone, we've got to know they can buy a house, they've talked to a lender, and if they're using a loan, and they've signed the paperwork with us. And if they haven't, we have to decide whether or not we're going to work with them, because people will not do this. Agents, I know you won't do this if you don't have any buyers and you're worried. Right. But at the same time, if you don't make that commitment to yourself, how many times do you want to get burned before you realize you ought to just work with people who want to work with you?
Right.
So you do more things to attract more people to work with you. So that's kind of where we're at with it, right? So the enthusiasm, the people also need to recognize this whole meeting is about, do they want to work with you? And do you want to work with them?
Yeah. If you guys are that value, like-minded, right? Exactly.
Can you show the value? Is it worth it to them? It'll be worth it to them in the way you present that. If you have any fear in presenting it, they're going to pick up on that subconsciously. So it just becomes part of, as I'll go back to awesome Lynette, who just says, it's just what it is. It's the way it is. It's just the next step. This is how I work. Yeah. If you don't make a big deal about it, then they won't make a big deal about it, right?
That's right. And you know what? Gets them used to signing contracts. There you are.
There you go.
Right.
So include, if you're not already, or just go back. All these notes will be in the show notes. Go back and take a look at what can you do to upgrade your buyer consultation and your initial conversations with buyers that will lead to showing that value, build that trust, have that collaboration and transparency that they really want to work with you. That's what has to come across. And hopefully we've given you some ideas of how to do that. Plus, if you're not up to speed with all these changes that are out there, nothing has changed per se, other than some MLSs are getting proactive. Things, we're going to see copycat lawsuits. There's going to be a drama here, and we've got a chaotic year, and you've got to get yourself ready for it.
That's right.
All right. That's it, Matt Emerson. That's all I got.
Well, that's good stuff, Jan O'Brien, and it is going to be really interesting to watch that. And it's going to be interesting to watch you and how we're going to have a lot more conversation around this whole topic, because as you get more proficient actually securing those buyer broker agreements throughout the year, you'll be able to share the techniques and the ways you're able to do that. And I have all the confidence in the world that you will actually be on the leading edge of that. So we will more to come on the buyer brokerage, which, has always been, as long as I've been in real estate for, 25 plus years, 30 years, however long it's been, a bone of contention. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, it's for some reason, right? It's just one of those things. So
there you have it. So up next, we're lining up people for doing our Ask 5 for the new year, and definitely we'll do a series, at least 1 or 2 podcasts on how to focus on finding those sellers who will be ready to get their house on the market because they've been waiting also for the interest rates to drop, that maybe they'll make the move, because I do think listings needs to be a focus for the new year.
Yep. And you can get all those show notes, like Jan mentioned, and links to the NAR report and some of that other information regarding the lawsuits that are out there over at WBNLpodcast.com. This has been episode 272. And something new for 2024, we've got an app for that. So if you are a WBNL course owner, we actually have an app that you can go download where you can actually view all of the coursework right on your phone, your Android, or your iOS operating system. To get that, you can go to the App Store and go download the Kajabi app. The easiest way to go do that, just log on to WBNLcoaching.com. Up in your course section, there's a little link up there at the top that says that will take you to where you can actually download that app. It's fantastic. Jen and I've been playing with it. All the downloads are there. Everything is there.
Have you played with it? Because I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So anyway, and if you were on our mailing list, you got an email today actually that pointed you towards that app as well. So go check that out. It will be another way that you can have WBNL at your side all the time, in your pocket, on the go, WBNL. So there you are, everyone. Once again, show notes, WBNLpodcast.com, episode 272, and we will see you next week. Get up, get out, and be forever wandering, but not lost.
Do it.
Just.
And I might cough. I don't know. I had something is going on. It's cold. It's like I turn the heat on. I don't know what I need to do. I need to probably sage my damn house. But I have a little bit of a sore throat, but I'm coughing. And I'm like, what? I cannot have something. I don't want to get sick.
I know.
The weather's been weird. So no sick.